Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 642, and today is August 7th, 2024. I'm the host of the show, Kyle Anzalone. We got a lot of news to get through on today's show, but first, want to mention the sponsor of the show, and that is the Expat Money Summit 2024. The Expat Money Summit is the world's largest offshore event, taking place entirely online from October 7th through the 11th. It's put on by Mikhail Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, and a highly sought-after expat consultant with over 2 decades of experience. You can discover why international diversification is a must for those looking to preserve their liberty and wealth. You can learn everything you need to know about crafting your perfect plan B, how to quickly acquire a second passport, diversify your finances offshore, invest in international real estate, and get in-depth insights on geopolitics from world-renowned experts. Headline speakers include Dr. Ron Paul, Doug Casey, Scott Horton, Tom Woods, Mark Faber, and Tom Logano. So to reserve your complimentary ticket, head on over to expatmoneysummit.com. Again, that is expatmoneysummit.com. All right, everybody, let's get into the show. Just a quick reminder that the show is at YouTube, Rumble, Odysee, anywhere you can listen to podcasts, hosted through the Libertarian Institute and on the blog at antiwar.com. If you go to any of those places, you can find the show notes page, which does include a link to the sponsor, the Expat Money Summit, and you can click through that link to get your complimentary ticket. You can also follow me on Twitter at KyleAnzalone_ for all the articles I write and all the shows I put out. All right, everybody, let's get into the show today. First up here, this one from Dave DeCamp, antiwar.com. Russia warns Ukraine costs for peace will increase as war drags on. So the head of the Russian Security Council warned Tuesday that the longer the war in Ukraine goes on, the higher the cost will be for Ukraine to achieve peace. So this is Sergei Shigao, I think former defense minister, now the head of the Russian Security Council. So I think that would put him as something of an equivalent to Jake Sullivan. He said each day it waits to make this decision to settle the conflict results in the loss over control over another part of the territories that Ukraine claims to be theirs, and most importantly, the loss of thousands of lives. He said, so in June, Russian President Vladimir Putin made a public peace offer for a deal that would require Ukraine to be neutral, lift the Western sanctions, and Ukraine to withdraw its forces from regions annexed by Moscow. That's Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. At the time, Putin warned that if Ukraine rejected the proposal, the terms would change. Kiev quickly rejected the offer, and Ukrainian President Zelensky has stuck to the demands of his peace formula, which requires Russia to withdraw from all the territory it has captured. Zelensky previously ruled out peace talks with Moscow, but it appears he may have softened his stance recently, as he has said Russia should attend the next International Peace Summit on the war that he is trying to organize. The Kremlin has said it's open to talks, but no concrete plans have been set. Shigao said Ukraine's leadership's illusions that the Europeans will hold another grand peace summit for Ukraine where all the domestic problems will be miraculously solved are costing the Ukrainian people dearly. Ukraine's window of opportunity is closing. The choice is up to the Ukrainian people. Throughout the war, the only time a real peace deal was on the table is back in March and April of 2022, but the U.S. and NATO discouraged Ukraine from signing the agreement and promised to support the fight against Russia, and that has cost Ukraine dearly. You know, we're talking about at the time, they wouldn't have even had to have actually acknowledged that Crimea was Russian territory. Now, the Ukraine's Western backers who have sanctioned Russia over the annexation of Crimea would have to lift those sanctions. And so that's somewhat of a de facto recognition of Crimea. But if you look, Russia was willing to withdraw its forces from Donetsk and Luhansk, and they wouldn't have had captured all of Zaporizhia or Kherson, and were willing to withdraw back to the Crimean Peninsula there as well. So Ukraine could have kept those 4 territories had they accepted that deal. Now Ukraine will never get those 4 territories back and will probably have lost a lot more when this is all said and done. All right, next up here, U.S. gives Ukraine $3.9 billion in direct budgetary aid. So the Ukrainian prime minister said Monday Ukraine had received $3.9 billion from the U.S. in the form of direct budgetary aid, which is distributed directly into the Ukrainian government through the World Bank. The aid is meant to fund government services, salaries, pensions, social programs, and other types of spending. It has also been used to subsidize Ukrainian small businesses and farmers. The U.S. has provided tens of billions of dollars in direct budgetary aid to Ukraine since Russia launched its invasion of February 22. The prime minister said that $3.9 billion was the first package of the budget assistance Ukraine received this year. So he said, this is the first tranche of direct budgetary support from the United States in 2024. In total, Ukraine will receive $7.8 billion in direct budgetary assistance from the United States this year, which will allow us to confidently pass this financial period. The funds are being transferred from the $95 billion foreign military aid bill that President Biden signed into law in April. The legislation included $61 billion for the proxy war in Ukraine, including $7.9 billion in direct budgetary aid. The $7.9 billion was included as a loan instead of a grant, an idea House Speaker Mike Johnson got from former President Donald Trump. But the bill gives the president the power to forgive the loan or could be paid back using frozen Russian assets, which would just present more problems down the road. All right, next up, this is a story I wrote yesterday for the Libertarian Institute. Mali cuts ties with Ukraine over Kiev's support for al-Qaeda. So Mali has severed its diplomatic ties with Ukraine following an attack by the local al-Qaeda affiliate on Malian forces. Kiev called the move short-sighted. So last month, opposition forces, including al-Qaeda's affiliate in the Sahel, that's JNIM, killed scores of Malian soldiers and mercenaries from the Russia Wagner group that is supporting Mali. So a representative for the Ukraine's security service, that's the SBU, said Kiev had aided JNIM in the assault. The rebels received the necessary information which enabled a successful military operation against the Russian war criminals. An estimated 84 Russian contractors were killed, along with nearly 50 Malian soldiers. So Mali expressed deep shock over the subversive remarks and received this statement as an admission of Kiev's involvement in the slaughter of its soldiers. Malian government spokesperson denounced Ukraine for supporting JNIM. He said that the remarks from the SBU confirmed Ukraine's involvement in a cowardly, treacherous, and barbaric attack by armed terrorist groups. Mali condemns the hostility of the authorities of Ukraine, who do not observe that Mali has always called for a peaceful settlement of the crisis between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Kiev responded by claiming Mali failed to provide evidence proving Ukraine backed the terrorist. So a statement from the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said, "It is regrettable Mali decided to sever relations without conducting a thorough study of the facts and circumstances of the incident and without providing any evidence of Ukraine's involvement in said event." Of course, from the Malian side, obviously the event that they're talking about is the evidence is the SBU admitting that they gave information to the terrorist group that was necessary to carry out the attack. So that seems like quite an admission right there. Hard to take that in another way. Kiev added that it has the right to take all necessary political and diplomatic retaliations. Not sure what that would be, but we may see in the coming days. So I give a little bit of background here at the end of my article. Following the 2011 American-backed uprising in Libya that ousted longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi, jihadist groups spread into neighboring countries and throughout the African Sahel. In the following decade, Mali experienced several coups as jihadists destabilized the region. During the latest coup in 2021, Assimi Goïta swept into power. Part of the policy of the junta has been to expel France, Mali's longtime colonial ruler. Under the junta, Mali has stepped up its ties with Moscow, including with the private military firm Wagner. All right, let's get into some news about what's happening in the Middle East, and there's obviously a lot going on there. But we'll start with the Americans' take on it, and that is actually a little bit of good news here from our friend Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Majority of Americans oppose using U.S. troops to defend Israel. So Dave writes, the majority of Americans oppose the idea of U.S. troops being used to defend Israel if it comes under attack by Iran, according to a poll conducted by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs that was released on Tuesday. The poll, conducted from June 21st to July 1st, found that 56% of Americans oppose U.S. troops defending Israel, while 42% support the idea. Support for defending Israel is stronger among Republicans, with 53% in favor and only 32 Democrats. Although 53% of Republicans being in favor is a pretty weak majority. Usually there is even, broad grassroots consensus among Republicans for support for Israel. This may go to show just how damaging Netanyahu's war has been for the reputation of Israel. So the results come as the Biden administration is vowing to defend Israel from an expected Iranian reprisal attack for the killing of Hamas's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran. A major coordinated attack launched by Iran and its allies could result in American casualties, and the U.S. support for Israel risks a major regional war. The U.S. defended Israel from an Iranian attack in April, which came in response to an Israeli bombing of the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria. The Biden administration intervened directly to protect Israel and is pledging to do so again without any authorization from Congress or debate on the matter. The Chicago Council showed the lowest level of support for defending Israel among Americans since the group began asking the question back in 2010. In 2015, 2018, and 2021, the majority of Americans, 53%, supported the idea. The Chicago Council attributed the lower American support for the defending Israel to Israel's onslaught in Gaza. The article published by the Chicago Council's website reads, the unrelenting Israeli attacks against Gaza have likely dampened America's willingness to defend Israel, especially among Democrats. All right. So this is interesting. Hamas named Sinwar as new political chief. So on Tuesday, Hamas named Sinwar as the group's leader in Gaza to head the political bureau after the Israeli killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. So before he was killed last week, Haniyeh was the highest level Hamas official outside Gaza and was the public face of the group as it was engaged in hostage deal negotiations with Israel, although Hamas officials said Sinwar was ultimately in charge of the talks. And if he's in charge in Gaza, I guess he would be in charge of the talks, because anything getting implemented by Hamas would obviously have to, if not be approved by him, certainly not opposed by him. However, if there is a more willing negotiator outside of Gaza, that could be somebody who pushes Sinwar to accept a deal, or maybe conditions on that deal that he would be hesitant to accept. So Sinwar has been Hamas's leader since 2017, and Israel attempted to assassinate him when he was elected in 2021. Sinwar is believed to be hiding deep inside the expansive tunnel system under the Gaza Strip, since he is the top target of the Israeli military. Sinwar and the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Daif, are said to be the masterminds behind the October 7th attack on southern Israel. Israel claimed to kill Daif in recent airstrikes on a tent camp in Gaza, which killed at least 90 Palestinians, but his death has not been confirmed by Hamas. Hamas officials said the decision to appoint Sinwar as the head of the political bureau was made unanimously. So a statement said, the Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas announces the selection of Commander Sinwar as the head of the political bureau of the movement, succeeding the martyr Commander Ismail Haniyeh. May Allah have mercy on him. The Israeli killing of Haniyeh suspended the indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas. In the weeks leading up to the assassination, it was widely acknowledged by Israeli officials that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was doing everything he could to sabotage the chances of a deal and a ceasefire. So no matter what the Americans want, by the way, it really doesn't matter, and we are going to back Israel. CENTCOM chief met with IDF chief to coordinate on Iranian response. So on Monday, the head of CENTCOM, that's General Michael Eric Kurilla, met with the Israeli Defense Forces IDF chief of staff Hezbollah in Tel Aviv as the two militaries are preparing to defend Israel from an expected Iranian reprisal attack. Kurilla also met with the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who said the visit from CENTCOM chief demonstrates strong U.S. support for Israel. Gallant said, "Your arrival in Israel at this time is a direct translation of U.S. support for Israel into action. The relationship between Israel and the United States is unshakable." Kurilla's visit came after the U.S. announced the deployment of a new warship and warplanes to the Middle East for the purpose of helping defend Israel. It is unclear when Iran is planning to launch an attack, but it could happen any day. Israel is also considered launching a preemptive strike, which will escalate the situation even more. Also on Monday, Iran's foreign ministry said Tehran does not seek regional escalation, but feels it must punish Israel for the Israeli killing of Haniyeh on Iranian soil, and that an Iranian response was inevitable. So the foreign ministry spokesman said, Iran seeks to establish stability in the region, but this will only come with punishing the aggressor and creating deterrence against the aventurism of the Zionist regime. The U.S. has shown strong support for Israel in the wake of the Israeli killing of Haniyeh, immediately pledging to defend Israel from any consequences it might face. U.S. officials claim they seek de-escalation, but U.S. military aid and political support has only emboldened Israel to escalate. All right, so this is interesting because, of course, the U.S. just says how much we're going to back Israel and is essentially making the situation worse and exacerbating the situation. We have Russia having a somewhat of a different take. So Russian President Vladimir Putin has asked Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to avoid civilian casualties in Iran's expected reprisal attack on Israel for the killing of Haniyeh in Tehran, Reuters reported on Tuesday, citing two unnamed Iranian sources. The sources says the message was delivered via Shoigu, the head of the Russian Security Council, and the former defense minister. He was in Tehran on Monday to meet with the Iranian president. The New York Times reported that Iran had requested air defenses from Russia in the meeting as it prepares for a potential war with Israel and the U.S., and that Moscow has already begun delivering radars and air defense equipment. Russia and Iran have increased military ties in recent years as a result of both countries facing heavy sanctions from the U.S., but so far neither country has confirmed that Russia is delivering new equipment. The deputy commander of Iran's air defense forces said that Iranian military was in the process of upgrading its air defense systems, but added that Tehran is not relying on any foreign country. So he said, we are 100% self-sufficient and we're not going to depend on foreign equipment, and the security of our air borders is not dependent on a foreign country. So Shoigu said during his visit to Tehran, he discussed Israeli escalations in Lebanon and the Israeli assassination of Haniyeh, which he called a tragic event. He also discussed with Iranian officials a, quote, whole range of issues, starting with Syria. Certainly the disturbing events in Lebanon with Israel were on the agenda. Of course, the recent tragic events that took place in Tehran were touched upon. It is impossible to bypass this topic. All right. So Nasrallah vows strong response to Israeli killing of Hezbollah commander is coming. So Hezbollah Secretary General and leader Hassan Nasrallah vowed in a televised speech on Tuesday that the Lebanese group would have a strong response to the Israeli killing of a high-level Hezbollah commander. So Nasrallah delivered the speech during a ceremony marked 1 week after Hezbollah commander Faroud Shakar was killed by an Israeli airstrike in a Beirut neighborhood, along with 2 women and 2 children. Moments before Nasrallah began his speech, Israeli jets broke the sound barrier over Beirut, laying out sonic booms over the city, which has a population of 2.4 million. Nasrallah denounced the move as a petty provocation, and this isn't something that you see very often. One of the only other times I've heard of this being done was when Saudi warplanes were doing it over Yemen when they were having massive rallies and protests. The jets would come and do sonic booms over them to try to, I guess, scare away the people and disperse the crowds. So Nasrallah said in his speech, "We have not sought escalations until now. We have been fighting in support of Gaza, but keeping in mind the Lebanese national interest. But an assassination of a top leader must be treated differently. Our response is coming. God willing, from us, and the axis of resistance will be strong." The axis of resistance refers to Hezbollah and Iran's allies in the region, including the Shia militias of Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, who govern the most populous areas of Yemen. Iran is preparing to respond to the Israeli killing of Hamas's political chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. The U.S. and Israel are expecting Iran's reprisal to be a major attack that will be coordinated with Hezbollah and other allies. The U.S. vowed to defend Israel from any attack, which Nasrallah mentioned in his speech. When Iran and Hezbollah spoke of retaliating against Israel for its atrocities, the U.S. reaffirmed its commitment to defend the Zionist entity. The occupation relies on the United States and Western countries for protection, as it is unable to defend itself. Meanwhile, tit-for-tat strikes between Israel and Hezbollah across the border continued on Tuesday. Israeli airstrikes targeted a village in southern Lebanon, killing 5 people, including 4 Hezbollah fighters. Later in the day, Hezbollah launched drones into northern Israel, and at least 19 people were wounded, including 6 soldiers. The Israeli military said most of the casualties were caused by Israeli interceptor rockets that missed and hit the ground. All right, so we may have already actually seen the U.S. beginning its support for Israel during this retaliation. So U.S. airstrikes pound Yemen as region on the brink of major war. So U.S. missile strikes continue to pound Yemen as the Middle East is on edge awaiting Iran's response to the Israeli assassination of the Hamas political chief in Tehran. The Yemeni news agency Saba reported 2 British strikes in the Taiz province, which is on the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, the body of water that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. So far, the U.S. military hasn't taken credit for the airstrike in Yemen on Tuesday, but U.S. Central Command claimed to have downed 1 Houthi drone and 2 ballistic missiles on the Red Sea. On Monday, CENTCOM claimed to destroy 1 unmanned aerial system in a strike on Houthi-controlled Yemen, which is where most Yemenis live, and claimed that it destroyed several Houthi drones and 1 ballistic missile over the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden. CENTCOM said that it conducted the strikes in Yemen on August 3rd. So what I think is probably going on here is that the U.S. understands that the Houthis are likely to be involved in the response, the retaliation attack on Israel, and so they can't preemptively bomb Iran, but they can preemptively bomb the Houthis without stirring too much other trouble. And so my guess is that they're doing this and they're thinking that, oh, we're going to weaken the Houthis a little bit so they can't be involved in the retaliation attack. Maybe that'll work. But we've seen time and time again that the more people bomb the Houthis, really the stronger it seems to make the group, and they're not able to eliminate the Houthis' military capabilities. And so if anything, this will probably provoke the Houthis to try to take a stronger response against the Israelis. All right, everybody, thank you all so much for watching today's show. Back with more later in the week.